Right, welcome to this full council meeting. Only one item on the agenda, which is local water done well, but an important item nevertheless. I'll just open with karakia. Kia tau mai te maramatanga, kia tau mai te rangi Māori, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai kia. So we have apologies from Deputy Mayor Bryant, Councillor Shellcrass and Councillor Walker. Someone happy to move. Councillor Ellis, second, and Councillor Maru. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. There are none. So we have first up hearing of submissions. So we had a small number of submissions. 3 people wish to be heard. Unfortunately, Matthias Schaffner is now unable to speak. So we did have Ian Sheaves. We now have Joe in his place and David Ogilvie. So I'll just do it in the order in which it's in the agenda. So Joe, I would invite you up to the table first. Is there I've done declarations of interest in winner. Welcome, Joe. I think is it 5 minutes? But I think it's 5 minutes. I'll give you a nod at 5 minutes. So, other than that, over to you. Welcome along.
Kia ora tātou. Ko waiau, ko Joe Hanita tukunga, ko au te kai whakarai o Wakatū. So for those who don't know me, my name's Joe Hanita. I'm the CEO of Wakatū Incorporation. Ian gives his apologies. Unfortunately, he had to go to Marlborough today to look after another development that's just about to be completed for us. So he's all into infrastructure today on the ground. I have a little bit of a kōrero that I just wanted to share, noting that you have received our submission and all of our perspectives are noted in that document. But just to give a bit of context, Wakatū is a Māori-owned organisation with strong whakapapa ties across Te Tauihu, but our role is distinct. We are a long-term intergenerational landowner and business, guided by Te Pai Tāwhiti, our 500-year vision to protect and enhance our taonga for current and future generations. And within that taonga in particular is whenua and wai. Through our whenua order program, we align cultural, ecological and economic outcomes. We view this water infrastructure reform as an opportunity to embed those values into the region's future systems. We are landowners, growers, producers and investors in the region's future. Water is central to our operations and our obligations. Our voice in this conversation reflects that enduring responsibility to ensure decisions made today uphold the needs of future generations. Our contribution is values-based and place-based. We do not claim authority in governance matters that rightly sit with mana whenua, with our iwi. But we bring a deep commitment to cultural and environmental integrity and the ability to influence, implement and invest in ways that uphold the tikanga and support collective well-being. We support a governance model that is both shared and differentiated. A future water entity must enable both iwi authority and Māori landowner engagement. That means decision-making alongside mana whenua where appropriate, and clear structured roles for Māori entities like Wakatū who hold enduring operational and environmental responsibilities. Infrastructure must reflect values, not just function. Water infrastructure is never purely technical. It is about what kind of future we are building. When done well, it expresses and upholds the values of kaitiakitanga, mātauranga Māori, and intergenerational well-being. Kaitiakitanga is a framework of responsibility over the environment, focused on protecting mauri and maintaining balance. When applied to infrastructure, it shifts thinking from extraction and control to protection and regeneration. Examples include prioritising restoration of urban wetlands and riparian margins to filter stormwater before it enters rivers and estuaries, incorporating native planting and stormwater reserves to stabilise soils, enhance biodiversity and reduce maintenance costs over time. Designing stormwater infrastructure that slows and absorbs water rather than simply diverting it, such as daylighting pipe streams and creating green swales in urban spaces. These approaches reflect kaitiakitanga because they seek to work with natural systems, not just build over them. They also lower treatment costs, improve flood resilience, and create spaces for environmental and cultural value. Mātauranga Māori brings deep place-based insight. Mātauranga Māori reflects generations of intergenerational observation and interaction with specific landscapes, waters, and cycles. It brings a layered understanding of change over time, patterns in rainfall, flooding, stream health, and seasonal tohu, or signs. Examples include using tohu environmental signs, such as changes in bird migration or whitebait presence, to inform catchment planning and ecological restoration timing. Applying knowledge of traditional water flow paths and flood zones known to Hapu and Kaumātua to guide infrastructure placement and hazard mapping. Recognising cultural values of water bodies such as mahinga kai and wahi tapu, which may not appear in technical plans, but are critical to long-term community well-being and legitimacy of decisions. Integrating Mātauranga Māori does not mean replacing technical analysis. It enriches it by grounding decisions in local context, lived knowledge, and intergenerational wisdom. We believe that both kaitiakitanga and Mātauranga Māori offer practical, grounded insights that can strengthen water infrastructure across our rohe. Intergenerational wellbeing is our baseline and not an aspiration. Where much infrastructure planning is shaped by short-term political cycles, we plan for generations. This means building systems that endure, maintain public trust, and sustain deep connections between people and place. We recognise that decisions made today will impact not only our children, but our grandchildren and their children. Infrastructure must support intergenerational wellbeing. Plans beyond 30 years to ensure long-term resilience. Investment in nature-based solutions that regenerate over time, and embedding cultural markers of success, such as thriving ecosystems, community connection, and restoring modi of wai. We do not see this as compliant, but as a strategic opportunity. Embedding kaitiakitanga, Mātauranga Māori, and intergenerational wellbeing in water infrastructure is not a cultural add-on. It's a forward-thinking, resilient, and place-based approach to public infrastructure. It offers smarter investment decisions informed by local knowledge, systems that work not against natural processes, greater legitimacy, and public support, particularly with Māori economies, Māori communities, and younger generations. You will have noticed in our submission sort of two contrasting components which we see as connected. One about the role that we see of our Māori economy, our Māori community in the decision-making processes, and our ability to share to contribute what I've just shared with you now. But also that we support, in essence, some of the thinking that has been presented. Talking to Ian, our GM of property, that at a high level, his main two considerations for you as per our submission was thinking about the role of council and thinking about the role of the council-controlled organisation, and making sure that while there's a specific focus and accountability, in particular for water and wastewater, making sure that we don't forget about the holistic nature of stormwater, and making sure that, so while the council-controlled organisation option will provide clarity and accountability, we cannot, at the detriment of thinking about things holistically and our connection to the wider opportunity, why council should still have a role in the three waters. So hopefully that came through in the submission, that there's a bit of a balance that we feel is important. But the role of Māori, we think, has a long-term positive benefit for the discussion. So kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for coming in. So are you available for happy to answer any questions? As Joe noted, not Ian. So technical questions, he may to come back to us later or defer. But are there any questions, either out of anything Joe said this morning or anything from the submission? Councillor Manning.
Do you think within the Maori community and iwi and Wakatu there would be a possibility for public-private partnerships going forward in infrastructure?
So I can't speak for iwi, but what I do know is we are about long-term planning and thinking about what will benefit our community and our region. Infrastructure is a topic of discussion within Māoridom, and we are looking for what are the right infrastructure transactions, deals, activities that we should get involved in. So I think there's an ability to have an open conversation about it.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in and stepping in for Ian, and thanks for the submission.
Bye-bye. Kia ora.
David, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
My submission was very brief, unlike Wakatu corporations. So what I thought I would do actually outline why I determined option 1 in your document was my preference. I'm a little disappointed that there's only 15 submissions. I think Richard Kirby just sort of said there were over 700 at the other TDC, Tauranga District Council. And it does disappoint me because what we're discussing today, as you said earlier on, is just so important for the district. I mean, if Three Waters and the CCO happened, for example, they would virtually halve the operation of the council, because 50% of the debt is from Three Waters, which means probably 50% of the operations also comes from Three Waters. And the community involvement of that would be quite limited, as I read it. So it's just a sort of brief comment before my 5 minutes starts.
It's all right, David. I'm not being particular.
No, thank you very much.
You just carry on.
I will. So, this document was very important. This one here I'm referring to. And I want to make the point that it talks about the delivery of the Three Waters. And delivery is really the important issue. To my mind, there are 4 aspects to that delivery. One is the employment, it's staff and management and the likes. Secondly is the council leadership. It's yourselves, your own strategy and your actions which devolve from that strategy. Thirdly, the financials, your debt funding, development contributions, and your revenue. And fourthly, of course, is the community involvement and the community consultation. So when you deliberate on which choice you make, to my mind, the delivery of the service is important. And those four factors are part of that, if you like, service itself. When I looked at option 2, it had considerable merit. A CCO, for example, would bring a board of directors, and according to the government, this wouldn't, or the choice, it would not include council staff nor elected members. That means a fresh start, introducing that wider experience from directors and from management. It might mean improved technical knowledge coming through. It might mean development recommendations and actions, which probably may be different from what we are experiencing currently. Moreover, as Joe has just pointed out, the CCO would concentrate specifically and entirely on the Three Waters and not be distracted by other non-council, or sorry, non-Three Waters activities which the council has. And that's always a problem. I can refer you, say, to Network Tasman, with their focus on the network and nothing else, or Port Nelson, or the airport, and their focus, or even the Kai territory domain, their particular focus. So the lack of distraction is quite an attractive aspect of a CCO. And the other operating factor was financial, because from my reading, a CCO would actually be able to get more funding through borrowing and perhaps even through revenue than the current council operations can. Now that may change, of course. So although I saw the merits of option 2, which is a CCO, option 1 still remains my much preferred preference in 3 choices. I just get on option 3 because it excluded stormwater, and I think stormwater, particularly in a district this size, needs to be involved entirely as a Three Waters activity. So although I saw the definite merits of option 2, option 1, which is the in-house business unit, how you form that business unit is going to be very important, because you can look at a CCO option and say, can we institute some of those benefits in an in-house business unit? Can we keep staff from being distracted from non-Three Waters activities? Can we look at the funding aspect, for example? So those are points I just wanted to raise. Another strong element was the community involvement. With the CCO, I think community involvement, although there is a statement of expectations in that CCO, you lose community involvement with that. And the council, although we've only had 15 submissions, that community involvement still is a key for the operation of the Three Water services. So in summary, when the council meets, obviously from what's on the screen above you, meeting today to discuss and deliberate on the Three Waters, when you do meet, refer again to those 4 key elements I referred to initially. Your staff management, number 1. Number 2, governance, leadership, strategy, actions. 3, the financials. 4, the community involvement and consultation aspect. Now, whether the in-house business unit or even a CCO or any other vehicle system satisfies the current government is at this stage, of course, uncertain. And both the previous coalition government and the current one are obviously concerned that delivery of the Three Water services by councils is not satisfactory and reform is required. Therefore, the direction and the decision you make today may, of course, be changed dramatically, either later this year or in 2026. I think that's unlikely, given the slogan, local water done well, and the emphasis the current government is putting on localism rather than perhaps a more regional treatment of the Three Water services. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk today. And if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your written submission. It's always interesting when we get few submissions, because on one hand, you breathe a sigh of relief and go, oh, well, you know, by and large, hopefully people are generally happy with the suggestion. On the other hand, you're right, it is such an important thing. It's, I guess, you just have to hope that people have taken some notice and aren't just going, oh, well, it's not Three Waters, so therefore we'll just breathe a sigh of relief and move on. Because it is fundamentally different. Even an in-house business unit is a fundamentally different approach to managing these assets than it has been historically.
I think, Mr. Mayor, if you sort of said you want half a council or the continuing full council, then you would have got 150, which is really the issue.
Potentially, it does have an impact on the size of council's operation. Are there other questions of David, either based on his submission or anything he said this morning? If not, thank you very much, David, both for your written submission and for coming in and speaking.
And keep up the good work, people. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks. Cheers, David. Right, so we will come back to the agenda and the resolutions. Richard, just before I do, I just want to acknowledge Corey Hibbard, I think is either online or was online. From Rangatane over in Marlborough. So welcome, Corey. Thanks. And also to acknowledge the input from the iwi members who were part of the process of putting together and attended a number of the meetings with ourselves. So Corey was one of those, Turi Hippolyte and Hemi Sudgren as well. So either all or some of them attended a number of the meetings of the project governance group and provided their input, feedback, and those conversations and discussions. That was much appreciated. So with that, I'll hand over to Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. So yes, just a brief introduction from me. So first of all, just to correct the numbers of submissions in the report says 16, but you'll have been circulated the one we discovered after the report and the agenda was published from the Public Health Service Waipounamu, part of Te Whatu Ora. So now 17 submissions rather than the 16 the report talks about. Obviously, that's was talked about a pretty small number. The majority were supporting the in-house option that we proposed. I guess it's really hard to get a good feeling of the wider community's feeling from such a small number of submissions. I again don't think there was any kind of information in the submissions which was of such I suppose significance and different than we had already considered to recommend a change from the proposal. So I guess we're still recommending progressing with the in-house option, but again noting the point that the Mayor made that it's not a status quo, it's still a significant step change from the current sort of situation. We are recommending establishing an internal advisory board, which would bring at least some external advice into the situation to provide some operational overview and some advice to the council. I note that Councillor Dake has suggested some potential amendments to the resolutions, and I'm sure he will talk to those. So if you accept the idea of creating that oversight board, staff will come back with some advice about makeup and role of the board. I guess we still think there's value in continuing the discussions with other councils and potentially a multi-CCO or some other arrangements to work with those. So keen for the council to confirm that intention. I guess the next steps are for us to develop the water service delivery plan, and I guess whatever decision you make today will inform that process. So with that, take the report as read. There are various people who are more expert in water areas here to help answer questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So are there any questions specifically as opposed to comments really? But obviously comments are welcome as well. But questions of either Alan, Richard, or any of the other staff in the room?
Sorry. Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, I mean, as elected members, we've all had the letter from the Minister with respect to local water done well, which has been sent to all councils. And then I understand that council staff have had a separate meeting with Department of Internal Affairs. So I'm just wondering whether it would be useful to update us on the meeting with DIA, because if you were reading the letter from the Minister, you might be inclined to think, oh, this is, putting us in one direction, but can we get an update?
I'm just looking at Leonie. I'm not sure how confidential was that meeting. Was that open discussion? I'm just trying to think back.
I think basically what they conveyed to us is that they were happy with us to go alone at this point in time, but it all depended on our water services delivery plan and whether we met the sustainability criteria. And if we did meet that, at this point in time, they weren't saying to us, you shouldn't be going on your own, you need to combine. They didn't say that. But what they did say is that we needed to be really clear in our water service delivery plan that we could go on our own. We also indicated to them that we were still open to discuss with other councils, and they said, please include that as well, because they are really open to the idea of obviously larger entities, and to have that in a water service delivery plan would be a big plus for us as well. So those were the kind of the two key points they made at the time. I can't recall there was anything else, Leonie, was there?
With the chair, no, we weren't directed in any way. There was encouragement to work with our neighbours, and financial sustainability was a really key what they'll be looking for in our water services plan, which we'll work on after this, obviously. And yeah, but I think if you read between the lines, they are really encouraging us to work with our neighbours in whatever form that may take. Yep.
I'll just note that not everyone received that letter. There were 3 variations of the letter from the minister to the councils who had taken different approaches. So everyone got a slight variation on the theme of the letter. So, which was interesting. Councillor Greening.
Thanks. Look, I'm happy to move resolutions 1 to 3 at this stage, and I'll let someone else if they want to move the other resolutions. My question just relates to the need for this advisory committee or person or whatever it is. I think in the report it refers to technical expertise on council committee. That's what it says at page 14 anyway. So I'm just wondering, is this a reflection that that staff don't think we have the technical expertise in the governance group, which we've never really required over the period that I've been here, and seem to have managed quite well? Or is this a reflection of the fact that staff don't think they have the technical expertise within the staff group? So maybe someone could enlighten me on to why we need to go in this direction, given we haven't really needed it in the past.
I'll probably have to be very sensitive to answer that question. I think professionally, and you'll know we've just been through an LTP and an annual plan, and the investment in the 3 waters, I have to say, has been compromised by the overall rate input that the community provides. And the report actually indicates that we need some people in there that focus on 3 waters, the appropriate investment into 3 waters for the longer term. So that's how I'd answer your question.
So are you suggesting that we need finance people in here to put the plan together? Is this just for the plan process that you just referred to? I mean, because it does seem to me that it's really, if that's what government is wanting, that we have an adequate finance team that have done this kind of planning before for our long-term planning, etc. And we have, I would have thought, competent water engineers also to provide staff advice, as they have done on numerous occasions. So I'm just trying to get a handle on why you think we need this extra expertise.
It's the finance is the key part of it, but I think the key thing is to identify exactly where the long-term investment should occur, and not focusing on the rate increase for this year or next year or the following year. It's about investing in the longer term. That's what this is about. It's not about the technical advice, the technical team. We have very good people within our teams now, and we provide counsel with advice. My comment to you is that despite that, that is embroiled in the other decisions that council makes on all other activities. And unfortunately, for the 3 waters themselves, sometimes the investment in the 3 waters activity is compromised by some of the other priorities that council has. having a technical board that can provide the advice on the right investment will enable the internal business unit to be able to invest appropriately to minimise the maintenance costs that we have now over time by completing more renewals so that we minimise the maintenance and operational costs and keep the infrastructure up to date.
So I get a sense that what you're suggesting is that some advisory board tells council this is where we're investing in, and if there's financial pressure, this has priority. I mean, I got the impression, certainly from the submissions this morning, of a more holistic approach, which is what the council is here to do, which is reflect the needs of the community and balance competing priorities. So I still struggle to see how that advisory board would add anything to the final decision making around the council table that hasn't already occurred in the past before.
So I think, so specifically because you've only indicated a desire to move 1 to 3, and that actual item is not 1 to 3, and Councillor Dakey has a variation of wording that is actually before the implementation, well, the exact wording Glenn can speak to, but that a report's brought back to council for consideration, where all of these things I think can be debated, because look, I think you make a very good point. There is a fundamental difference between an internal advisory board that may provide an additional degree of expertise at a governance level, but it is still going to be recommending to council. The council is still going to be making the decision. So the issue that Richard raised in answer to your question, Mark, will still remain that when you get to the LTP, regardless of whether the internal advisory board thinks we need to spend another $100 million, the council will still have to weigh up that investment against roading, parks and reserves, environment and planning, etc. So that is one of the, I guess, concerns the government and DIA may have with the in-house business unit model, despite the fact they made it one of the options for council to choose. So I absolutely think there does need to be more debate about exactly what it does, exactly what expertise may need to be on it, if any, externally.
Well, I think, yeah. So,
but you haven't, just to be clear, you haven't actually moved that component of the resolution. So.
No, I haven't. I've just moved options 1 to 3 because I think there's probably unanimity around the room. But and someone may second that, and then someone may want to move the other resolutions, and there might be a wider debate. So, I'm moving those 3, and I'm calling a division as well. Thank you.
Righto. So it's been moved 1 to 3. So that effectively for those who are following that, receives local waters done well, accepts all submissions, and accepts the submissions from Health New Zealand. Blah 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 blah. It baffles me, but that's what Councillor Greening has asked. And he's moved, but it needs a seconder. So if it lapses for a seconder, we'll just look for someone to move something else. So there is no seconder. So
why would you second that?
Okay, it's now been seconded. So I'll just put the resolution because there is no point debating it further. It doesn't really do a great deal. So by division. So just so we're all clear, what it contains is 1 to 3 on the board, which is a little different from what is in the agenda, because 3 is accepts. Oh, sorry. Can you just?
1 is received report. 2 is
accepts all submissions,
and 3 is confirm option 1.
So that's just so we're clear, because that is slightly different from what's on the board. So you're moving effectively the resolution.
I haven't seen anything on the board. Nothing's been shared. Sorry.
No, that's all good. Look, don't panic. So you're moving receiving a submission. So it's actually 1 to 4, which is now on the board, and the only change is that 3 has been accepts the submission from Health New Zealand.
All right. Yeah,
which is separate. Yeah. And so you're also wanting to move confirms option 1.
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually 1 to 4. He has.
Yeah. Yes. That's right.
He has effectively moved that because if you read the resolution in the agenda, so is everyone happy? So because it doesn't know, yeah, that's all good. Just checking. Yes, all good. Thank you both. I think we're there. All good. Right. So now it is 1 to 4, including the additional item about Health New Zealand submission. It includes confirmation of option 1 in terms of internal business unit, and it is going to be called by division. Rob.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Dakey.
For.
Councillor Dowler.
For.
Councillor Ellis.
For.
Councillor Greening.
For.
Councillor Hill. For. Councillor Maru.
For.
Councillor Mayling.
For.
Councillor McKenzie.
For.
Councillor Kinnaman.
For.
Mayor King.
For.
11 for.
It's carried. Right, so now we have the last 2 items. I'll come across to Councillor Dakey, who's indicated a willingness to move a slightly amended wording from what's contained in the agenda. So, Councillor Dakey, over to you.
I'll just see my wording since it may have changed. Okay, so this is just some additional changes to reflect the fact that in principle, we support the establishment of the board, but just reporting back to council around what that might look like. I think we heard today from Joe's submission around the width and breadth that this subject covers and the need to get this advisory board correct. The form that might take, whether it be internal or external, is too early to say. So that's why I've put there with the option of external, because it may well turn out that it's better to have them come on board. So not ruling out anything at this stage, looking for options and the associated costs of those options. So we go into that decision with a full scope of information. So support the need, because we are moving from a status quo to a status quo enhanced, which means it is going to be a different operation. There is going to be more challenges and a different structure. So changes reflect that. In number 6, this just reflects the fact that we're making a decision today, and really we're looking for greater alignment in the short term. In the long term, options will remain there for a different structure possibly, but we're looking for savings with other councils at this stage. We're not looking for long-term goals. So I just wanted that to reflect that we're making a decision today and heading down that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. So that's the wording, the changes
Could the
in
screen
yellow.
be shared, please?
Yes, it's about to be. And is there a seconder for those 2 items, Councillor Mayling? So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any questions, comment, feedback? Councillor Ellis, Councillor Kinnaman.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure who can answer this question for me, but why the issue of a board rather than potentially a committee that could include independent members? You know, for example, we have iwi membership specialists in that area. So why is there some explanation about why we're specifically set on the board with this particular focus?
Alan, Rich, anybody?
It doesn't preclude that it is committee that ends up being there. The wording is such that it board.
So just for clarity, there's not some legislative thing that says you have a board. No. I suspect, given delegations and all the hoo-ha that comes with it, it'll have to be a committee, because that's how you delegate something, whatever that looks like, and whatever the council or the subsequent council determines the role of the committee is. But we have plenty of examples of joint committees of council. We have 2, actually, ironically enough, joint committees of council, both the NRSBU, nominally called a business unit, actually not, and the landfill business unit. called a business unit, actually not, that are run by joint committees. I think what this council, well, actually not this council, a subsequent council will have to seriously consider is whether to, because business units are quite different. You can have one, but it's not the current structure we run with landfills and NRSBU. But I do think council will have to turn their mind to whether actually creating a proper business unit and the associated issues that come with it, which is a halfway house actually between a joint committee and a CCO, may be something they wish to consider. But all of these are options, and I think all of those options are potentially covered by the wording, because council will have to turn their mind to what is it you want them to do, what can you delegate through this process, what does it look like if you make it this structure, and then make a decision about which is the preferred way forward. So I think we need to provide plenty of flexibility in this resolution. I think there's a lot of conversation yet to go as to exactly what it might do, and hence exactly what the structure might look like.
I'm quite happy to change it. Well, change it to advisory committee. I think one of the things we're going to come back to you with is that we're busy drafting up what we need to do, setting up this internal business unit, and we're probably going to have to establish either this committee or certainly some establishment committee to oversee the establishment of the internal business unit. The ideal situation would be to set up this internal advisory committee early so that they oversee the establishment of the internal business unit prior to the 1st of July 2027.
Yeah, so bearing in mind this is all post-election. So some or none of us might be here to have this conversation. So we just need to ensure the resolution that the subsequent council was working with, although they can obviously change that because that's what they can do, provides the degree of flexibility. So just noting down, thank you, Councillor Ellis. I've got Councillor Kinnamoth, Councillor Hill, Councillor Green and Councillor Dowell.
Oh, I'm just asking for
Councillor
the
Bailey and
screen to be
Councillor
showed, that's all.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Greening. So Councillor Kinnamoth.
Thank you, through the Mayor. With the information that we handed out previously, we talked about iwi participation and aspirations being progress as part of the council's partnership with Te Taihu. Now, I think we're looking at something slightly, well, sorry, starting again. What's the council staff thoughts of how we can include iwi in all this setting up preparation and the online or ongoing involvement in this? Because I've listened to Joe and other people who this is very, very sensitive, very, very important to them. So I think we need to be inclusive a bit more than just the Te Taihu partnership.
Perhaps I could respond to that, Councillor Kinnamoth. It's, you'll be aware that the current project governance group that's overseeing Local Waters Done Well has 3 representatives, iwi representatives on it. The intention is with this here is to, as much as we can, include those into this new committee. Obviously, it's something that we've broached with the team. We've also considered that team also looking at the Tasman Local Waters Done, or Tasman 3 Waters activities across, because we've got consents coming up and everything. So whether it's the advisory committee that we're setting up or whether it's another one with those on board, I'm not sure at this stage. The ideal situation is to have both, so that they oversee the business unit as well as everything else that business unit does with respect to water, wastewater and stormwater. So the intention at this stage to come back to you is those 3 iwi representatives, what's the 3, that iwi representation will occur on this joint committee. Yeah, on this committee, advisory committee. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. If there wasn't a change to the resolution, like if it was in its original form, and we were agreeing in principle to establish an internal advisory board, what would be? So I'm going to the original, which I think said that we would an internal advisory board. What would be the process whereby, so we agreed to that, and then something happens down the track and I imagine a report would come to council with some options and things. So I just don't know. I don't quite get the point of trying to be more specific here around it to be a committee or so. And yeah, so I just imagine that the 5.1 is just what would happen anyway. Am I missing something? Okay. And in terms of the 0.6, are we then implicitly saying that we are no longer so much, notwithstanding a new council can make any decision they like down the track, we're saying that we are not so interested in the options longer term with the other councils? There's a refocusing from actually we could look at a CCO across wherever if we, there's changes in people or thinking. Is that what's intended by 6? In which case, if it is that, then I wouldn't be supporting it because I think we need to stay open to, because there is some indication that down the track, years down the track, there can be benefit in doing something.
I'll leave the mover of that section to provide you an answer to that question. Councillor.
Yeah, no, that's not the intention. There's nothing implicit in here that stops council from doing that. Council would always have options. This simply stops us from having the counter to what we're confirming. By today, we're confirming an in-house model. 6 essentially becomes counter to that, where we say, well, actually, we're accepting in-house, but really we're looking for a long-term. Today's decision relates to what we're setting up now. There is nothing in this that stops us having that longer-term vision or the next council wishing to do that. I feel for today's purpose, the purpose of today is setting up the in-house model and setting it up well and what it should focus on. That step is another conversation and nothing in here precludes us. In fact, it's always been the intention of this council to go down that road, but other councils perhaps weren't as aligned. So I don't think that eliminates the option. I think it focuses the intention of this document on what we want this to look at rather than outside this resolution today.
Yeah, I still don't quite get it. So I get you, but I don't. There's probably nothing in it whether I vote to support it or not. Actually, but
I mean, ultimately,
we've had a direction that we've been.
Ultimately, you could just move 5 as worded. You can take all the rest out, and all of that's going to happen anyway. It's a question of how specific and clear you want to be. Yeah. So you have a community that's effectively, via not submitting, said we kind of like in-house, but we want to stay in-house. I do think it's a slight kind of to then say, well, anyway, by the way, we're actually going to do these other things, because if I look at the councils who suggested the other things, they have had hundreds of submissions, most of which have been against quite strongly. So I think there is a risk of. So I think what Councillor Dakey is saying is the decision is the decision, and then we need to focus very clear on implementing that decision. And part of all of the conversations we had with Buller, Marlborough and Nelson were that regardless of what we all did, those things down there, we should do anyway. So we should work together. We should try and consider joint procurement. We should look at absolutely having the same information backhouse systems and processes, so that should a future council or the government or a future government decide that they want to push us into a different governance or management arrangement, that becomes as easy as it possibly can be. So I can kind of see the benefit of the wording. That said, whether it was the existing wording or the current wording or actually no wording below 5, all of those things about reports to council, future council decisions, all options remain on the table is actually the case. You can't preclude any of them in a council resolution anyways.
No. So, and then if what you're suggesting is that actually we're sort of slightly moving against 5 by 6, then why would that have been put up anyway? So that would be my question then. Why have we put it forward?
I think we are kind of we run the risk of getting into the roles like semantics. But I get it's important, like the wording and people's comfort with it either way. And I suspect if this part of the resolution, which is arguably the least important part of the entire resolution, is the one where we have a disagreement on, that would seem weird. But I'm used to things being weird in politics. So I don't know if there's an answer from Richard as to why they included other 6 with the original wording Other than as Councillor Dakey said, we have made it pretty clear from our council's perspective right through, we were quite keen on either some form of joint arrangement with Nelson or potentially more parties.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I just wondering whether, because the way the resolution is written now, it only limits us to alignment of services, information and the like. And obviously, if we go down the path of having discussions regarding, we come back to you, but I wonder whether it confirms the desire to remain open to have discussions with other councils regarding the long-term governance. So it just leaves the door open. So if something does move into that space, staff have the authority to have those discussions.
It's been moved and seconded. If someone wants to move an amendment, they can. Or if anyone wants to alter the wording. I do think we're going to spend a lot of time on arguably the least. Nothing in the resolution, either previously or currently. I know. Well, because that's what the mover, that they moved and it was seconded. So. Right. Councillor Dowler.
Okay, so if you just bear with me for a minute, I've got an issue that has been outstanding for quite a few years within council at the moment anyway, to do with stormwater. Now, everything in the pipes is fine. I'm talking rural stormwater here. I've been involved with a situation not so long ago where two departments on council basically had a debate on the side of the road over who was going to maintain the drain. It was either going to be rivers or stormwater. Neither wanted to own it because it was in the too hard basket. The drain needed cleaning, etc., etc. Then we found out that building compliance had allowed a stormwater network to be put into the drain. So then it became a stormwater one, full stop. So that was resolved on the spot. My concern is that right around the whole district, because we're talking right around the whole district with stormwater, is that we've got roadside drains that take the water off the road, and then put it through a culvert and it goes away to a creek or whatever to somewhere. And then we have another drain that's beside the road, slightly further away, and that is to be maintained by the landowner. Now, that was a discussion that happened at the recent operations committee. So when you start going out chatting to other people, do you know how many kilometres that transportation will look after as roadside drains and how much the landowners are going to be looking after at no cost to council? That's my concern, because just turning around and saying we've got 3,000 kilometres worth of drains doesn't answer that question in my world. It needs to be a bit more refined. If you're going to go out and say, well, we've got 2,000 kilometres of roadside drains that have to be maintained by the transportation department, and we've got.
Does anyone want to delve into the intricacies of roadside drains and land drainage and stormwater? Because again, we could be here for hours. I don't think anything in this changes that. That's my understanding.
It's not. It has nothing to do with this decision, but it has to do with the way it's an operational decision, sorting out what drains are what, and there's a program of work to work out which are private drains, which are public drains, which are roading drains, and which are other drains. That has been a confusion for many, many years. It will continue for a while. This decision here may help focus attention on resolving that, but at this point in time, it's got nothing to do with the decision.
So which part of this are you concerned about, Councillor Dowling?
So it says here, greater alignment of services, information and procurement to increase efficiency savings.
So that specific wording is in relation to discussions with other councils.
Yeah. So you need to know how much you're maintaining and how much doesn't affect this up here today, but I'm just preempting that there's a lot of work to be done for the greater alignment of services and costs, etc.
And that would be regardless of whether we went with a CCO or an in-house business unit or stayed with the status quo. Okay. Thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, because we were sort of a bit confused, I think, at the start about whether we were doing 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. We didn't really have a substantive discussion about number 4, which was choosing option A or B or C. and we've already voted for that, and that's all good. We're done and dusted on that. But actually, what I wanted to say in relation to that was, I mean, if I was sitting here and it was just me making a decision, I mean, actually, I probably would be going down the CCO path. So I just wanted to say that. But it needed actually to be a CCO with Nelson City. And actually that would be my preferred option. It does concern me about the costs of actually setting up an internal business unit, because we're going to have to set up an internal business unit, but so is Nelson City going to have to set up an internal business unit.
Potentially, you could choose to set up a joint business unit.
Well, you know, you
Speaker,
could do,
please.
but yeah, I mean, I don't know what discussions are happening in relation to that. Nothing. But you know, I see here in the report we've got funding of $250,000 in 25-26 to set up an internal business unit, with another placeholder of 1.25 million in the 26-27 financial year. You know, these are substantial sums of money actually to set up these internal business units. You know, I've had conflicting information, I guess, about what it means for our FMIS and whether we can run 2 sets of books. I mean, it really does worry me, I guess, what are going to be all these costs going forward. And if setting up the internal business unit, you could very quickly, if you just looked at the financial sustainability, be in the same position as you were in terms of setting up a CCO. So, you know, we've already passed that resolution. So, you know, I'm a bit late in the piece, but I did just want to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing.
Just quickly, I sit on the NRSPU and have for about 9 years or more. It's a joint committee. We do have technical member in there, and that was a decision of the committee to make sure that one of our members had technical expertise, and we've done that for the last 6 years, which has really helped. And we also have an iwi member on board, which works well as well, but at times it's hard to get one. The concern I have here with local waters done well is there is going to be no cross subsidisation going forward from general rates, so that means people's water is going to be cost more. And the other thing is that only half our ratepayers are actually on a lot of these services. So I just think in the future we are going to have to work with other councils, and that's why I want to see that there, and that's why I support this, because I don't think we are big enough on our own, in all honesty.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, do we even need number 5? So to set up a separate committee or advisory board, it would have to come to council, or when you sit back in that seat after the election, Mr. Mayor, you can form whatever committee structures you so desire. So my, you know, the key question is, if we set an advisory board, what does that mean for operations committee? So it's a whole of council structure thing rather than an advisory board. So I just don't even think we need number 5. I think in terms of what you think that will look like, we'll come back to report to council to establish whatever structure council thinks they should. Because you solve one issue. No, I've got an advisory board for 3 waters. But what have you got for operations? Is it still the same? Is it merged with regulatory? I just think it's preempted it. The key decision was, what is the mode that we were exploring as a business unit?
We've already made the fundamental. I mean, we could move none of this on kind of if we had it now, because we'd all be home by now. So, because but it's a question being implicit or explicit. So this resolution is explicit. Implicit would have been stopping after 4, where Councillor Greening stopped and going, we don't need any other resolutions. In order for anything to happen, staff have to bring back a report. How they go about formulating that report, they can set up a internal discussion group. There are so many things you could do. So I mean,
I happen to foreshadow him. That sounds as just to go, we just stop now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's over to the mover in a second, or if they think there's merit in carrying on down this path or just leaving it unsaid. I mean, obviously, there's been quite a bit of debate about it. I think there are a couple of things that came out that really clear, though. This is not the status quo. First thing, and I think I was certainly very clear about that when I spoke when we went out to consultation that don't, and I suspect, unfortunately, that the reason we got lots of submissions is because most people do think it's a status quo, but it is not. And the fact that Councillor Mackenzie raised those issues, setting up an internal business unit, if you had, I think there were some figures provided about setting up a CCO, which dwarfs the figures that are in this budget, but where you are on that continuum will depend slightly on exactly what form of business unit, joint committee you decide to set up. Ironically enough, we already run, I mean, if you think what Nelson and us do around both, well, particularly wastewater with the NRSBU, which covers a very significant portion of the wastewater service delivery. We've been doing this now for, gosh, how long has that been in place? 30 years?
Yeah, close to that.
But at any point in time, any council could come in and not re-establish that joint committee. So after every election, it disappears. And for 30 consecutive years of elections, councils have come in and chosen to re-establish it, put members on it, and that's both a decision for Nelson and for Tasman to make. That would seem to demonstrate people see some benefit in the structure. Otherwise, one or other council at some point probably wouldn't have re-established it and put membership on it. So I think that there is a lot of water to go under this bridge yet post this conversation, and all the points that were made are very, I think, very obvious. It is going to cost more. If you and if you look at the rates increase this year, if you're connected to those three services, your rate increase is substantially higher than those who are not connected to those three services. The removal of the subsidy, in relation to subsidy in inverted commas, but the offsetting of debt by using the port dividend will have an impact. The costs that Councillor Mackenzie outlined are only going to be paid for by the people connected to those services. So there immediately is another $1 million+ that they are going to have to pick up. And if you then follow through on Councillor Greening / Mr. Kirby's point about, or actually, Submitter Ogilvy's point about needing to invest more, and Mr. Kirby's answer to Councillor Greening's point about exactly what is the purpose of having some independence, which is to effectively recommend what they believe is the appropriate level of investment. All of those things only lead you to one conclusion. It is going to cost more. Under any of these structures, whether it's a CCO or an in-house business unit or any of the other options, the costs are going to go up. The only way to potentially mitigate some of that is some form of joint collective operation. And I think I was reasonably clear. And the conversation leader, I was a strong proponent. I've spent 3 years working on bringing together Marlborough, Buller and Nelson in the lead up to this whole conversation. So I've been passionately advocating for a collective approach. Now, having read the proverbial tea leaves, got the feedback from our nearest neighbours and their decision, and then subsequently seeing the financial information, despite my kind of personal view, I supported the approach that we went out and consulted on. We've now got the feedback. I support the approach we're taking now. But I do think there is so many things that are going to become clearer between now and 2027, not the least of which is a whole local government election, and whether DIA and the government accept our proposal in the first place, that I'm not uncomfortable with the resolution. I'd be equally comfortable if it didn't exist at all. So I just think we need to get to a point of voting on this, deciding whether what we're doing, unless the mover and seconder want to withdraw it entirely. Councillor Greening.
If I could just have the resolution back on screen again, because it keeps on going up and coming down. I'm not sure why it needs to come down, but just wanted to look at 5.1, which I was skimming through as it went down, which was, it still talks about an advisory board. Is that intentional, or should it now be a committee?
It's been crossed through.
Oh, it's been crossed through?
Yeah, board's been crossed through and committees in place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So 6, just on a broader discussion, given I'm coming in after other people have spoken. I probably agree with Maru in the fact that Councillor Maru in the fact that these do seem redundant resolutions, and as they were first worded, I disagree with them. I do prefer some of the wording that Councillor Dyke has proposed to amend it. I still think they're not required, but if we're going to go down this route, then I just want to explain my explanation for some of this, which is 6. Yes, I think the whole point of this of council, and I think we've been consistent with our discussions with Mayor Smith, is greater alignment. That's what we're aiming for. They've gone down their own track. They want to do it in-house as well. They haven't gone for a CCO model. So we're not going there. The community, through the election period and through Three Waters, were very clear that they were opposed to anything other than in-house. A comment that I think David Ogilvie raised, which is one of the aspects of all of this, is community involvement, and you lose that through a CCO. So that's where people have supported this. I thoroughly agree with the rewording in terms of it should be a discussion about alignment opportunities, not about a CCO. No one's going there now, so there's no point having those discussions. It's about alignment opportunities, which we have pursued consistently as an ongoing strategy for some time. And it's all about aligning businesses, getting efficiencies. I still think there are other alignment opportunities within council as well. And as highlighted in earlier discussions, eventually, when you have full alignment, then you have a better opportunity, should you choose to go down that route, and then it becomes thoroughly political around merger, which would bring everything together, and effectively you've got your CCO through an amalgamation merger anyway, Councillor McKenzie. So that's where I think the discussion is. I still have doubts about this advisory committee and its value, but it's an open discussion, and we're going to come back with options. I assume this is the focus of what Councillor Dyke is trying to get, but it's still left on the table. I don't think it's necessarily a necessary requirement. I think we have the skills in-house, but staff are indicating they don't. So that's probably a concern for me, but I'm not going to object to Councillor Dyke's rewording. But I don't think we need to go here. I actually think when we get a more thorough analysis of the business unit, I think the council should be open to sitting there and going, is this business unit actually worth it, or do we just stay with what we've got? And that's the business unit. So I think there needs to be a broader discussion coming out of this, and some analysis of whether the business unit actually even stacks up financially, and we don't have those details yet, and I look forward to seeing them. And I hope that it will be a comparative analysis between this business unit, its cost of establishment, its benefits that it brings, as opposed to the cost of status quo and the benefits that brings, and which is more efficient and which isn't. And maybe there's an opportunity to trim down and resize business units as well, which would also be an encouraging signal. So that's where I am on this. And Councillor Maru, who's indicated why we don't need to go there, I agree, but I'm happy to entertain a report back and make another decision whether we go there or not. So I suppose what I'm indicating is I'm happy to support Councillor Dyke in his direction of these two resolutions at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Graney. Unless Councillor Dyke would like to have a right of reply.
Very quick one. Very quick one.
We will then put the resolution.
Didn't think this would make so much debate, just trying to clarify. And the reason I'm actually also clarifying this is not just for us, but it's giving some guidance for staff that we do support in principle the choices that they recommended, but also that this recommendation, if the public reads it, it reflects what I've heard and what we're trying to do, so that it is clear that this is the direction that we intend to go down. So I hope to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Dakey. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? It is carried. Excellent. Right. I think that draws us to the conclusion of today's meeting. So I will close with karakia, kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa panamu te moana, aroha atu, aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa.